All right, let us talk about June the 12th, 1989, and a rematch that was some 8 years in the making. Sugar Ray Leonard, Thomas Hearns, the sequel, and controversy, Raphael, in this one, in particular because of the decision that Thomas Hearns didn't get. But let's go back to the buildup for this event. We had to wait a while for this rematch.
8 years, TJ, after their classic first fight. That was, of course, one of the biggest fights of the times, one of the biggest, most anticipated fights, I believe, in boxing history. To become, this was for the undisputed welterweight championship back when it was two belts. You had, this collision course that had been a lot of people been waiting for between Ray and Tommy, who were still young fighters in their 20s. And they put on a battle for the ages, a spectacular fight back and forth. Both guys had their big moments. But in the end, it was Sugar Ray Leonard, in the typically showman-like way that he had about him, who knocked out Tommy Hearns in round 14 to become the undisputed champion. And we had to wait 8 years. I mean, it wasn't because I don't think that Ray was like ducking him or anything. It was just he had injuries, the eyes, the retirements. Tommy was moving up in weight. There was a lot of stuff, and it just, it didn't happen. And finally, Ray was back fighting on a more regular basis when he had come out of a retirement, when he ended a almost 4 year retirement and fought Marvin Hagler, defeated him, and then he was back. So he went on to fight, as active in terms of the next couple of years as he had even, before he had the injuries. So after Hagler, he fought Don Lalonde at super middleweight, which was like a hybrid fight where he fought for the super middleweight title and the light heavyweight title. And he scored a spectacular knockout against Lalonde. This is in November of '88. And now he's got the super middleweight title. He never really did much with the light heavyweight belt. That was just sort of a nice little item to add to the resume. I don't think most people consider Ray to be a serious light heavyweight champion. Nothing against him. We know how great he was without that. But anyway, in the next fight in June of 1989, you have him. Finally, they get the rematch done against Tommy Hearns. Now, Tommy at that time, the WBO was still in its infancy. He had won the WBO super middleweight title, but we were alive back then. I was in like early in college. Nobody cared or knew or
Correct.
considered the WBO anything. So that belt, if you look at like boxing, you're like, oh, WBO champ against WBC champ. It's like a unification fight. No. The WBO title was not at stake. Ray didn't care about it. Nobody cared about it. But the WBC title was a different story. So Ray defended that title. The folks that love to obsess about such things on social media would have had a field day with this because it was a 168 championship fight contracted at 164. They did fight at a catchweight. So people will, I'm sure, will dismiss how great Sugar Ray Leonard was because he had the audacity to come up with a catchweight. That was one of the deal points.
Well, we should just interject. We're not going to go for 5 minutes, but the total stupidity of having it considered a super middleweight title fight when they fought above the super middleweight limit with Lalonde was stupid on the face. There were a lot of stupid things going on, but that's okay for the purposes.
Well, no, they didn't fight above the super middleweight limit. I mean, the Lalonde fight was one. Sugar Ray Leonard was 65 and Lalonde was 67. They fought. This was the exact same scenario that happened when Manny Pacquiao fought Antonio Margarito.
So similar then in this case, where they're at the catch weight, it's still below 168 for this fight. And I will interject one other thing. And you and I are huge Sugar Ray Leonard guys.
Before you go there, let me rephrase. I didn't mean to say Pacquiao Margarito. I meant to say Tank Davis against Leo Santa Cruz, where they fought at 130, but the lightweight belt and the junior lightweight belt were both at stake. Same exact scenario.
Gotcha.
They were not over the limit for the title.
All right. And in this case, Ray didn't lose to Thomas Hearns. So it's Hearns that had to beg and chase Ray Leonard for a while. For example, when Leonard lost to Roberto Duran, they fought like 4 months later, 3.5 months later, something like that in October of the same year. So this, just as we set this up, this was a long time coming for Thomas Hearns. He wanted this fight for a long time, if not immediately in the rematch mode, certainly throughout the 80s.
But
he wanted this fight. It took a while.
The way that it went for most of the matches that involved Ray, or all of the matches, frankly, that involved Ray, in the 9 fights between the 4 kings, of which Ray participated in more of them than anybody, was because he was the straw that stirred the drink.
Right.
They were the 4 kings, but as I've joked, it was the 1 king and the 3 princes, because Ray was the center of everything. He was the guy that drew the money. He was the one that was the most popular, who had the biggest profile. And they were all happy to fight him because he brought them big money. And likewise, because they were great second fiddles, they brought him the biggest, not only money, but also respect and eyeballs, etc. They needed each other. But when it came time to do this rematch, it was, of course, Ray was the A side. Ray was the A side in every single fight of the fights he had, including in the rematch against Roberto Duran. Nonetheless, Tommy Hearns was a great fighter also. They're all worthy Hall of Famers, obviously. And they put on a great fight. I mean, this was, in the pantheon of the 9 fights between the 4 kings, most people think about, obviously, Hagler Hearns. They think about Ray and Roberto Duran, the first fight. They think about Tommy Hearns against Ray in the first fight. This rematch between Leonard and Hearns, in my opinion, is like, I think it's one of the best, once you get past Hagler and Hearns. This is and Hagler, I guess, and also Ray and Tommy number 1. This is a really outstanding fight. It had no right to be that. These guys were sort of, they were still superstars, but they were no longer at their best. It's like you said, it's 8 years after they were young men in their primes, not even maybe in their primes, and they fought to a split draw. Most people feel like it was appropriate that Tommy should have had his hand raised that night. He did score knockdowns twice against. Yep. He dropped him in the 11th round for the second knockdown, at which point you figure he salted it away. But in the end, the judges had it 113 to 112, 113 to 112. So each judge gave one guy by that score, and one judge had it 112 to 112. And there you have your draw. And so Sugar Ray Leonard retains the super middleweight belt that he had. Like I said, Tommy's lesser considered belt was not at stake. And this was a tremendous fight. This is, this gives that 4 kings round robin of fights. This is like a depth fight of how great these fights were, because in any other time you might consider this number 1, but then you're like, oh, I can't be ahead of Hagler Hearns. It can't be ahead of their first fight, between Ray and Tommy, but it's every bit as good. Even Hagler Leonard. I mean, there's such a
well, and we have to go back on this. It was certainly dramatic at the end of this fight, just like it was dramatic in their first fight where Leonard had to rally. We didn't know completely at the time. We later found out right after the fight he was losing on the scorecards. Now, Angelo Dundee sensed that he's losing, and there's the famous line in the first Leonard Hearns fight where he's saying, "You got 9 minutes left, son. You're blowing it. You're blowing it." That was a 15-round fight. So now we're fighting 8 years later, and this is a 12-round fight in this instance. But when Hearns scored that knockdown in the 11th round, we got drama. Is he going to get the stoppage? It looks like he should get the decision. And Ray Leonard looked like a beaten fighter after that fight in the post-fight. That tells you a lot at the end of it.
Tommy Hearns, he should have stopped Ray that night. And I don't know this, but I have to imagine the number of times that Tommy Hearns has thought to himself in the ensuing years, I should have stopped that dude. I had him dead on his feet. And that would have been a huge feather in his cap. Mm-hmm. It would have, it probably wouldn't have diminished Leonard's legacy, but it would have increased Tommy's, because he's always the guy that's considered the one that didn't have the chin, that lost a lot of his biggest fights, fair or unfair. But if he had gotten the knockout, he would be able to say, I have a knockout against Ray Leonard. I have a knockout of spectacular nature against Roberto Duran. It would have definitely increased his legacy.
You know what else? And it just occurs to me while we're doing this segment, they would have probably fought a third time.
Yeah, that's true.
If Hearns had beaten him, they probably would have fought a third time in short order within the next year or two.
And after, because Ray won, he went on and fought the by far worst of the fights, the final fight of the 9 fights, which was the third fight, uno más, one more, against Roberto Duran, which bookended, the first fight with Duran in 1980, the last fight of these 4-man round robin in 1989. But you know what? At the end of the day, they did need each other because they cleaned up. I looked this up. Ray Leonard for this rematch was guaranteed $13 million. Hearns was guaranteed $11 million plus. They also had upside on a closed circuit and gate and other things like that. But they
understand, Pete. That's 1989 money that you're talking about. Easily double that money in the present day now, 2025, if not 2.5 times that money. So then you're talking about like a $30 million guarantee.
Well, also remember, TJ, and this is not really, doesn't happen a lot anymore. I mean, occasionally, but you had Caesar's Palace, which was still the epicenter of the biggest fights in boxing. The Caesar's Palace folks, the executives, they paid $8 million as a site fee. And that was just for the site. That had nothing to do with the money that they made on the closed circuit and the delay rights to HBO and all the international sales for television and the zillions of T-shirts and hats and programs and stuff that was bought, and the sponsorships. I mean, this was at the time, I don't know if it was like the all-time record for the gross of a fight, but it was way up there at the time.
Did a lot of business. All right. So
And a great fight, by the way, a really outstanding fight.
again, Tommy Hearns was kind of the hard luck guy, except for the booming knockout of Duran, in that he lost to Leonard the first time. He got KO'd by Hagler. And even though, and this pains me to say it, I believe he won this fight. And even when you go
Yeah.
back and rewatch it, he won the fight, but didn't get his hand raised. It's ultimately a draw as it
So
goes
for what
down in
it's
the
worth,
Four
I
Kings.
actually was looking at this on BoxRec. You can see some stuff that they put in the historical part of it, and they list old scorecards. So it says like some of the scorecards that were rendered besides the official card. They had the Associated Press, which I presume was the legendary Hall of Famer Ed Schuyler. I don't know that, but I'm pretty sure he was probably the guy covering it. He had it 113, 112 for Leonard. The UPI, United Press International, had it 113, 112 for Leonard. So the newest services had it for Leonard. The Boston Herald, one of the newspapers that was heavy in boxing coverage, had it 113, 112 for Hearns. The KO magazine, which was one of the more popular boxing mags of the 1980s, founded by our good buddy Steve Farrad, they had it 115, 112 for Tommy Hearns. So there were people, there were some folks respected that did think that Sugar Ray Leonard won the fight. That's even having been dropped twice. So take that for what it's worth. But I always felt like, yeah, Tommy nipped it out that night, and he probably deserved the fight.